Muy buenos días en América Latina y
Good
muy
morning
buenas
for Latin
noches
America.
en China.
Good evening for China.
Bienvenidos a este
Welcome
seminario en
to
línea
this
China
online
más
seminar,
Derecho.
Chinese
Este
plus law.
webinar será
This
impartido
webinar
en
is
idioma
gonna
español,
be
portugués,
presented in
chino e
Spanish,
inglés.
Portuguese, Chinese,
Pueden
and
seleccionar
English.
su idioma
You
en
can
la parte
select the
inferior de la
language of your
pantalla
choosing
donde
at the
encuentran
bottom of your
ustedes una
screen
figura
where
de
you
un
can
hombre.
find the globe
Me
icon.
presento,
I
soy
introduce
Roberto
myself. So
Lafontaine,
my name is Roberto
director del
Lafontaine,
Centro de Cooperación
Director for the
Internacional
Center
para
for
la Enseñanza de
International
la Lengua
Cooperation for
China,
the Teaching of Chinese
Center for
Language,
Language
or
Education and Cooperation,
which is the CLEC
Oficina
Foundation,
Regional para América Latina y
in
el
the
Caribe.
Regional Office for Latin America and the
Nuestro
Caribbean.
centro en América
Our
Latina y el
center in
Caribe
Latin America and the
se
Caribbean
dedica a la
is
enseñanza del
dedicated to
idioma
the teaching
chino
of
entre
Chinese
instituciones
language among
públicas, privadas,
public,
gobiernos
private
nacionales, gobiernos
institutions, national
locales,
governments, local
instituciones de
governments,
educación superior,
education
instituciones de educación
institutions,
secundaria y
of
primaria.
both high school
Tenemos
and secondary
muchas
education, and
actividades durante
also
el año,
higher education
desde
institutions. So
webinar
we
como
have a lot of
este a
activities
concursos
throughout the
para
year, from
alumnos
webinars to
que
contests
estudian chino
for
mandarín,
students that study
capacitación para
Mandarin
profesores,
Chinese, and
etcétera.
also we
Así
have
que
training
los
for
invitamos
professors,
a estar
etc.
en
So we
nuestra
like to
base de
kindly
datos para
invite
ser
you to join our
informado de
database to
todas las
be
actividades
up to date of all
que
of the
estamos
activities
desarrollando.
that we are developing.
El derecho juega un rol
Law
fundamental
plays a
en las
fundamental
relaciones
role in
internacionales
international
y su
relationships,
importancia en el
and
contexto
its
de las
importance
relaciones
in the
entre
context
China y
of
América Latina
relations
no es la
between
excepción.
China and Latin
Es un
America is no
mundo donde las
exception to that.
economías
This
están
is a
cada vez
world
más
where the economies
interconectadas.
are ever
El
more
conocimiento de los
interconnected.
sistemas
The
jurídicos
knowledge of
se
the legal
convierte en un
systems
pilar
becomes
esencial
as
para
an
garantizar
essential
la
pillar to
fluidez de los
guarantee
intercambios
the
comerciales,
fluidity
la
of the
protección de los
commercial
derechos
exchanges,
laborales y
and
la
also the
correcta
protection of
aplicación de
labor
las
laws and the
normativas
correct
que rigen
application
la
of the
transacción
standards that
internacional.
rule
Este
international
seminario,
transactions.
Chino más
This
Derecho,
seminar,
busca
Chinese plus law,
precisamente abrir
is
una
aiming
ventana
exactly
hacia ese
at that,
fascinante y
opening a
complejo
window
mundo
to that
jurídico que une
fascinating
a
and
China y
complex
América
legal
Latina.
world that
No se
binds
trata solo de
China and Latin
comprender las
America
leyes
together.
de cada
It is not
país,
just about
sino
learning
entender
and
cómo estos
understanding the
sistemas
laws of each
legales
country, but
interactúan,
understand how these legal
cooperan
systems
y en
interact,
ocasiones se
cooperate,
desafian
and often
mutuamente,
also
generando
challenge one another,
oportunidades y también
generating
retos
opportunities
en
and
distintos
also
ámbitos del
challenges in
derecho.
different scopes of
El
law.
idioma chino, como
Chinese language
herramienta de
as
comunicación,
a
se vuelve
communication
una
tool
clave de acceso
becomes
indispensable
an
para navegar las
indispensable key of access
complejidades
to
del sistema
navigate the
legal chino,
complexities of the Chinese
facilitando
legal
desde la
system,
negociación de
facilitating
contratos
from the
hasta la
negotiation of
resolución de
contracts
litigios.
all the way through the resolution of
Así, el
conflicts.
derecho y el idioma
Like
chino se
this,
entrelazan
law
para
and Chinese
permitir una
language
integración
are
más efectiva en los
interlinked
mercados y ambientes
to
jurídicos
allow
de
for a
China.
more effective integration in the
Hoy
markets and environment
contaremos con
of
la
law in
participación de
Chinese of
destacados
China
ponentes
and
de
Chile.
diferentes
We will
países.
have the participation of
Confiamos
very
que
great
este
speakers from
seminario
different
no solo
countries,
será una
and we trust
oportunidad
this
para
seminar
aprender,
will not
sino
only be an
también para
opportunity to learn,
debatir y
but also
generar
to debate
ideas que fortalezcan las
and give
relaciones entre
room to
China y
ideas
América
that
Latina,
will
en
strengthen
un
the
mundo
relationship
donde el
between
derecho
China
se
and Latin America
configura como
in
una
a world
herramienta
where
para el
law
crecimiento
becomes a
económico y el
tool for
entendimiento mutuo.
economic growth and mutual understanding.
Con esta reflexión, queremos
And with
darles
this
la
reflection,
bienvenida y
we would like to
agradecerles
welcome
su
you and
asistencia.
thank you for your
Antes de
attendance.
comenzar, los invitamos a
Before we
dejar sus
begin, we would like
comentarios
to
y
invite you to
preguntas
leave your
en la
comments and
parte inferior
questions
de su pantalla
at the
en la
bottom of your
sección de
screen
preguntas y
in the
respuestas.
Q&A
Este
section.
y otros seminarios son
These and other
grabados y
seminars are
publicados
all
en nuestro
recorded
canal de
and
YouTube.
published on our YouTube
Para
channel.
mantenerse informados
In
sobre los
order to keep
diferentes
up to date
seminarios
on
y
the different
talleres que
seminars and
realizamos,
workshops that
pueden
we
revisar
organize,
nuestra
you
página
can check
web
our
y nuestras
website
redes sociales
and
que
our
están
social
siendo
networks
compartidas
that are
en el
being
chat.
shared on the chat
Además,
now.
les comentamos
Also,
que
we
todos
would like to
nuestros
tell you
seminarios
that
son de
all of our
carácter
seminars
gratuito
are
y
free of
entregaremos un
charge,
diploma de
and we provide
participación
a
a
diploma of
quienes asistan
participation
al
to those who
80% del
attend to
seminario,
80% of the seminar.
ambos obtenidos de forma
All of this data
automática a
is
través de la
obtained
plataforma Zoom.
automatically through the Zoom
Los
platform.
diplomas serán
The
enviados
diplomas
directamente a
will
su
be
correo
sent directly
electrónico
to
de
your
inscripción
email
durante las siguientes
uh,
semanas.
in the upcoming weeks.
A
Very
partir
well,
con
then.
nuestro
We will
primer
start
panelista,
with our first speaker,
el abogado Luis Felipe Borja,
lawyer Luis Felipe
abogado de la
Borja,
Universidad de
lawyer
las
from
Américas de
Universidad de
Quito,
las
Ecuador,
Américas in Quito,
especializado
Ecuador,
en Derecho
specialized in
Comercial y
Chinese
Civil
commercial
Chino
and
en la
civil law
Universidad de
at the
Beijing,
University of Beijing,
radicado en China Desde
Based in China
2013,
since
tiene
2013,
publicaciones en
he
Derecho
has publications
Comparado
on comparative
Hispano-Chino en
Spanish-Chinese
coordinación con el
law
Instituto
in coordination with
Interamericano
the
del Caribe de
Ibero-American and Caribbean
Derecho y
Institute of
Política de la
Law and
Universidad China
Politics
de
of
Ciencias
the Chinese
Políticas y
University
Derecho
of
y la
Political Science and Law
Fiscalía Popular Suprema
and
de
the
la
Supreme
República Popular
People's
China, así como
Procuratorate
publicaciones
of
en
the
la
People's
historia
Republic
de
of
la
China,
migración
as
en
well as
China
publications on
y
the
leyes
history of Chinese
migratorias
migration
en el
and
Ecuador.
migrations law in
Es
Ecuador.
abogado socio y
He's
profesional
a
en
professional lawyer partner
HW
at
Law Firm Group
H&W Law
en
Firm Group,
Shanghai, China,
Shanghai, China,
asociado
and
senior
also a
en
senior
Delta
associate
Legal
at Delta
Quito,
Legal,
Ecuador,
Quito,
y
Ecuador,
asesor honorario
and
en la
honorary
Cámara de
advisor
Comercio
at the Mexican
Mexicana en
Chamber of
China.
Commerce in China.
Presentará el tema
He will be
Derecho
presenting
Laboral en
law,
China.
legal
Muy
law,
bienvenido, Luis Felipe.
labor
Muchas
law in
gracias.
China. So welcome, Felipe. Welcome.
Muchas gracias por la
Thank you very
introducción.
much. Thank you much for the introduction. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Professor Lafontaine,
a la Fundación CLIC,
to the CLEC
Oficina Regional para
Foundation,
América
the
Latina
Regional
y el
Office for Latin
Caribe,
America and the
y
Caribbean,
a una persona
and
pues, que la conozco desde hace
also
mucho
a
tiempo,
person I
Andrea
know very
Mela.
well now,
Creo que
Andrea
es una
Mela,
de las
that I
personas
believe
que
is
hizo
one of the
este
people that
acercamiento, hizo
made
esto
this
posible.
approach and made this
Es un
possible.
gusto para mí
So it is a pleasure
compartir
for me
con estos eruditos de estudios
to spend time
sinológicos
with
sobre,
all of this very
el
knowledgeable
derecho
person
chino
on all of these
y mi
matters,
experiencia
Chinese
en la
law and my
República Popular
experience
China.
in the People's Republic of China.
Como mencionaban,
As I was
yo
mentioning,
soy abogado
I am a lawyer from
estoy
Ecuador.
en China desde el
I am in
2013.
China. I've been so since
Yo llegué
2013.
a
I
China
came to
para
China
estudiar el chino mandarín.
to study
En este
Mandarin
momento
Chinese.
quisiera
And I would like to now,
quisiera recalcar
I would
el
like to
tema de la
highlight the
importancia del
issue of
idioma
the
chino
importance of Chinese
como un
language
profesional
as
extranjero en
a
China,
foreign professional in
como
China,
abogado
as a lawyer
inscrito en China.
that is registered
Yo
in
llegué a
China.
China sin
I
saber
came to
una
China
palabra de
without
chino mandarín.
knowing, without speaking a word
Cuando
of
yo
Chinese
llegué
Mandarin.
en el
When I came here
2013,
in
llegué
2013,
con una beca
I
del
came with a
gobierno
scholarship
chino
by the
para
Chinese government
estudiar una
to
maestría.
study an
Y
MA.
sorpresa,
And surprise,
me
surprise,
dieron cuando me dijeron que
I
la
was
maestría
told
iba a ser en
that
chino
the
mandarín
MA was going
y
to
me
be taught in
incluían
Mandarin
el
Chinese,
idioma, la
and they
enseñanza del
included
idioma,
the teaching of the
los primeros 2
language
años.
in the first 2
Tomé ese
years.
reto
So I took on that challenge,
y aquí estoy, 11
and here I
años
am,
más tarde.
11 years later.
La importancia del chino
So the
mandarín para
importance of
extranjeros en China.
Mandarin
Bueno,
Chinese for foreigners in China.
comunicación efectiva,
Well,
superación
effective
de barreras
communication,
lingüísticas.
overcoming linguistic
Esto es
barriers,
algo que
all of
como
these is
estudiante,
something that as a
primeros años de
student in the
maestría,
first few years
primeros años de
of
estudio
my
de la
MA
lengua,
or the first years of the study of the language,
obviamente
of
es un
course,
reto,
it is a challenge.
reto de entendimiento, de
It is a challenge of
adaptación,
understanding,
de comprensión de
adaptation,
una
of
cultura,
understanding a whole
una
culture,
adaptación a la vida cotidiana
adapting to the day-to-day
y
life,
una
and
apreciación de los
also
medios de
an appreciation
comunicación
of
locales.
the local
Eh,
communication media.
Recuerdo que
So I remember that
antes de llegar a China,
before coming to
uno
China,
puede tener una
you
visión de este
can
país
have a vision of
por
this
medio de
country
nuestros medios
through
locales,
our local
pero es
media,
muy diferente
but it is
cuando
very
se
different
conoce la realidad
when you know the
viviendo en el
reality
país,
while you live in the country,
escuchando
when you
a
listen
personas, su
to
vida
people
cotidiana,
and their day-to-day
medios de
life,
comunicación,
all of the media
presentan
outlets.
un panorama muy
And this
distinto,
presents a very
el
different
cual
scenario,
te ayuda a
which
entender su
helps you
cultura,
understand the
te
culture
ayuda a entender
and
su forma de
helps you
pensar
understand the way of
y
thinking,
consecuentemente
and
por
consequently,
qué son las normas y
why
cómo
are these
se
standards such
estructura el
and
sistema
how
legal chino.
the legal system is
Ventajas
structured.
profesionales
Professional
que
advantages
da
as well
la educación
that you
y
get from
aprendizaje del idioma
education
chino,
and also learning Chinese
networking,
language
relaciones
is the
comerciales,
networking, commercial
mejores oportunidades
relations,
laborales,
better labor
avances en las
opportunities, and
carreras
also
profesionales.
more opportunities for promotions in your careers.
Obviamente existen mejores
By all means,
oportunidades,
there's
ya
better
que
opportunities
el dominio del idioma
because
chino
speaking
abre
Chinese
puertas
opens
que uno no puede
doors
imaginar
that
en
you
el
cannot
mercado
imagine
laboral chino.
in the labor market
Como
in China.
estudiante,
As a student,
puedes involucrarte con
you can get
diferentes
involved
institutos
with different
académicos
institutes, members of the
durante
academia
estudios
during your
que
studies,
al final
and
serán un gran
at the end of
valor
the day, there will be
para tu
added
carrera
value
profesional que
to your
busques
professional
en
career that
China.
you want to find in
Muchas
China.
empresas
Many
buscan
companies
activamente candidatos
actively are
con
seeking
habilidades
candidates that
lingüísticas
have
en chino
linguistic
mandarín,
skills in Mandarin
ya
Chinese,
sea
be that
porque quieren que tal
because
candidato
they want that a candidate
trabaje en
would
China
work in China
o los
or
represente
would
en un
represent
país
them
extranjero
in a foreign country.
que a razón del público podría ser algún
Maybe
país en América
this
Latina.
could be a Latin American country.
Permite acceder a puestos de
So
trabajo
this
más
allows to access
especializados,
more specialized
mejores
job positions
remunerados.
that are better
Esto
paid
es
as
algo
well.
que yo lo vi
And this is something
mientras
that I really
buscaba
experienced when I
trabajo.
was trying to get a job here.
Tener una base
Having
idioma
a,
chino-mandarín
a ground,
ayudaba
like a Mandarin
para una
Chinese
mejor
foundation, was very
comunicación con
helpful
tus
for
colegas,
better communication with
una
the
mejor
colleagues,
comunicación con
to
tu
better
futuro
communication
jefe.
with your future bosses as well.
Obviamente esto
And
facilita
of
el
course,
ascenso
this
entre empresas
facilitates the
chinas
promotions
o
inside Chinese
multinacionales
companies
y
or
aumenta
multinational
la
companies, and
empleabilidad
also it increases
en
the
sectores
employability
como el
in
comercio
sectors such as
internacional,
international
la
trade,
diplomacia. Si eres un
diplomacy,
estudiante que
if you're
busca
a student that wants
servir en el
to
servicio exterior,
pursue
el idioma
a foreign
chino, al menos
service
en mi
career,
país, Ecuador,
Chinese language, at least
es
in
un
Ecuador,
gran aditivo a tu
is
hoja
a
de
great
vida.
asset to your CV.
Si quieres
So
dirigir tu carrera
if you want
profesional
to
en
steer your
temas de
professional career
tecnología,
in terms of
temas de
technology
turismo.
or tourism,
Otra de las razones por qué
or
es
another of the
importante
reasons of
tu
why is it
idioma,
important,
el
this
sistema
language,
de
is
puntaje para
the
registro de
systems
extranjeros.
of scores for
Las empresas
foreigners
chinas
registries. So Chinese companies
tienen una cuota
have a
para
quota
emplear,
to employ
tener trabajadores
or
extranjeros.
have foreign workers. They have a quota for foreign
Esta
workers.
cuota
And
se
this
define,
quota is
obviamente,
defined,
si
of
es que la
course,
empresa logra
if the
probar
company can
a la ciudad en la cual tiene la oficina que
go to
el
the
extranjero
city.
es una
So this
persona
quota is defined.
que no puede ser reemplazada o su mano
You
de obra
need to
no puede ser
prove
reemplazada
that you as
por
a
un
foreigner
chino local,
can't be
lo cual
replaced by
nos
a local
obliga
Chinese
a
person. This
presentar
forces
pruebas,
you
a
to show
presentar
evidence of your
certificados de
competence, and it forces
conocimiento
you to show
de
certificates of
idioma y
knowledge,
otras
of
áreas
language, and other areas
que nos ayude a
that
evidenciar
will
que
help us
podemos satisfacer este
prove that
puesto de
we can
trabajo
meet
en
the
la
requirements
empresa
for this
china.
job position in the Chinese company.
Usualmente,
Usually,
si llegas a un
if you
entendimiento
come to
con la
an
empresa
understanding
china,
with the Chinese
firmas un
company,
contrato
you sign
laboral
a work
y con
contract,
esto la
and with
empresa
this,
va a aplicar
the
al
company
gobierno local
would be
para que éste
applied to the local
apruebe o
government
no
so they can approve or
que
reject
tú como persona
that
extranjera
you, as a
trabajes en la
foreigner,
firma en una
will
oficina
work in
específica
that
en
company in a
China.
specific office in China.
Esto es un paso
So
sumamente
this is
importante,
a very important
ya
step
que al momento
because
que recibes
when
la
you receive
notificación
this
del gobierno chino
notification
que has
of the
sido
Chinese
aceptado
government that you have been
como
accepted
trabajador en
as
empresa
a
X,
worker in a
en
certain
ese
company,
momento
that
tú
is
puedes
when
aplicar a una
you
visa, a
can
un permiso de
apply to
residencia
a visa or a
en
residence
la
permit
República Popular China.
in the
El
People's
dominio del
Republic
chino
of
mandarín
China.
como
So
factor
speaking
clave
a
en el
Mandarin
sistema de
Chinese as a
puntos.
key factor in the score system.
Nuevamente,
So
el
again,
sistema de puntos
the score
es
system is
complejo.
very
Hay
complex.
muchas categorías,
We have a lot
tendrás
of
que presentar
categories, and you will need to
certificados de
present
conocimiento de
certificates
idioma,
for knowledge of language
certificados de
and
haber
certificates
participado en
of participation
seminarios,
in
premios
seminars
de tu
awards by your university or other institutions, and certificate of participation, and even a certificate that you can receive in this seminar where we are at now. You could maybe show this as well and add this to your resume so you can apply to a job in continental China. Again, you have advantages in the labor market and also in the understanding of labor laws. So what you can see on the screen now, on your left, is an example of this acceptance by a local government that authorizes you to work in a certain company in a certain city. Let's take into consideration that based on the work contract and based on this acceptance letter, you will be able to work here and you will have the labor benefits and residence benefits in the city you were assigned to and that you were approved to. On the right-hand side, you have what we call the certificate or the ID of a job permit. And this job permit could be that it could be a bit small here, but in the top right part, we have a score A, B, or C. And the minimum that a foreigner should have is category C. Otherwise, this can be they can be denied their petition of working in China. And category B usually requires several advanced certificates of knowledge of the Chinese language, plus trainings, acknowledgements, internships, and labor experience. All of this is something that is very important to go up categories. Category A is, well, of course, it will have the different awards that you have obtained, and you also have your wages that you are promised in your job contract. Usually, people who have a salary or they have signed a job contract with a salary greater to 50,000 yuan a month will be categorized as they're going to go to a category and they're going to have to pay the taxes to the Chinese state, social security, etc. So in general terms, the elements of the labor contract in China, the employer should sign a written contract with the employee within a month from the first day of work. What consequences do we have on the lack of compliance of this if we don't sign it in a time of a month? The employer should pay twice the salary to the employees. If they don't sign this in a year, we consider that there is an indefinite contract by default. The language of the contract needs to be in Chinese Mandarin. And for foreign employees, they should be bilingual Chinese and also the language of the employee. However, always you need to check the Mandarin Chinese content, even if the contract is in two languages. In the case there is any misunderstanding, case there's any conflict, the Mandarin Chinese language will prevail. The compulsory content of the contract, name, house of the employer, and name, ID of the employee, all of that information, the employee can sign with a residence, be that in the country of origin And then when they can enter China, they will have to register first with the Chinese police 48 hours and after arrival, and they need to get the residence permit, and they will present modifications to their contract and also obtaining they will need to also get a permit after they get the residency in China. So the duration of the contract, the date of the end of the contract, all of this end date is going to be very important for the ID card or the work permit that I previously mentioned, because if you're in China, this certificate that has a QR code will change the information in the employer if you decide to leave the company and move to another. And this certificate will have a validity depending on the date of finalization of the job contract with a certain company. And then again, this period can be expanded if the contract is renewed or if you decide to move to another company. It also have a job description, scope of work, responsibilities, the place of work. Again, this is very important as well because Chinese authorities should determine where are you authorized to work in continental China, special areas, etc., or in administrative areas as well. So your hours, holidays, days of rest, the basic salary, the calculation methods, and the method of payment, conditions of work, and also specific clauses. Regarding the different clauses regarding the hours, the Chinese system and the laws that protect the employee are very specific, that workers can't work more than 8 hours a day, and they should have breaks, suitable breaks, and if you work for overtime, they need to be paid. That is going to be according to your salary, or they can also be according to a previous negotiation that you do with your employer. So what happens in reality? Many of you know of Jack Ma, the tycoon, a CEO of Alibaba. He gave a speech some years ago regarding how or why Chinese people need to work in what he called the 996, 9 in the morning to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. He said that that was the only way of pushing the Chinese economy and that everyone should accept this as a culture of work. Of course, with employees, this can be a great sacrifice. These periods of 996 are very common, especially in technology companies. And as you see on the screen, if you don't work 996, other will do it. In this sense, new employees, young employees that go out to get a job, they have a competition with millions of people that want to get a better livelihood, a better job position, and they are willing to work overtime. without the need of complaining or trying to get extra payment for these hours. And this is a cultural issue. This is part of the job culture in China. So on the right, you have job culture and goals. You need to consider that your contract, be that this is a legal document that will talk about your responsibilities at your job place, as we've spoken. But it is very common that during your work, certain events will take place that will be considered as an acceptance or an extension of the goals that you have set for yourself at the company. I give you an example. It's very common that in the Chinese New Year, before leaving for holidays, you get a big office party, or on the one side you celebrate the Chinese New Year, and also give a report to the offices and the employees of the actions and the goals that have been complied with in the previous year. And it is also very common that during this celebration, during this ceremony, the employees sign some certificates that you would think are part of a ceremony or part of the party or festivities, where you say that for next year, I commit to sign 250 corporations or strategic corporations. And it happens that many foreigners sign that thinking this is merely like some sort of ceremonial thing or traditional thing. And at the end of the year, they have complaints by their boards of directors or supervisors of why have not they complied with what they signed in the ceremony last year. And therefore they see it as a reason for being fired or terminating the work relationship with their employee. Therefore, this is completely illegal, can't be done. So if you require to do an addendum or a change to the activities or the goals that are given to the employee, and these need to be in written, they need to be an addendum to work contracts, or they need to be promise or a specific legal document with a signature from all of the parties that certain employees or their goals this year, 2024, will need to reach the 200 strategic signatures. But they cannot make a foreign employee understand that does not understand what the certificate says. They cannot expect them to understand the severity of what they're signing over a ceremony. And that in their eyes should not be something that influences their day-to-day work and is not binding in their eyes. So Social Security in China, importance for foreigners. It is compulsory for all of the employees to pay Social Security, and this includes medical care, work-related injuries, and also maternity. Illegal termination of a work contract. So there needs to be a 30-day notice in most cases, or special cases. There's usually test period without compensation if they do not comply with the established functions. It needs to be by mutual agreement, and it requires some compensation as well. Forbidden compensation allows for an immediate elimination of the person from the company without compensation. It is crucial to understand what a legal and illegal termination of a contract means, both to protect the employees as well as to protect the interests of the employers. The mutual agreement termination of a contract where both parties agree on ending the relationship or where the contract expires, contract with a certain duration ends, or where the employee retires, or etc. Death, the contract also ends automatically. Bankruptcy of the employer when the company declares itself to be bankrupt or they stop their operations. And this was a very common topic, a very sad topic during the pandemic. Many companies that were closed for 2-3 years did not have the funds or sufficient flows to pay for the rent of the place if they didn't have their own place, or to pay their employees or pay Social Security. And many were dedicating themselves to many were filing bankruptcy. So now in China, this is something that needs to be authorized and needs to be decided by a judge, that a company is in fact allowed to declare bankrupt, because a judge could determine that the company has enough assets and therefore they can continue to operate based on their common trade. So regarding the compensations, compulsory compensation in most of the cases of rescission or additional payments by consent to avoid legal complications, a subsidy for medical care in case of a dismissal by disease. So on August 16th, a Peking court declared that a work contract and a work permit is invalid. And this in the case of a foreign person who was dismissed. And what this person was asking was to be compensated for 4 months because he had already signed the job contract, and the court rejected this petition of the 4 months before, that he had the permit of the city, the permit that I showed you before in the first few slides, to work in this specific city. We should take into consideration that the compensation or the basic calculation is 1 month of pay per year of service. Now, this month of pay is going to be an average monthly pay based on also on the minimum wages by the specific city where you are working at. So if you have a job contract that has a pay of 60,000 yuan a month in a city, let's say Hangzhou, of course, court will not accept a compensation for 60,000 if you work for just 1 year. They're going to give you a compensation for what a common employee makes or a minimum wage in that specific city. So that is something that you need to consider it as well. So as a conclusion, this is a letter by a company opening a job position in China, where we can see the importance again of Mandarin Chinese as well. Chinese Mandarin will open doors to enter companies and to enter companies that are looking for opening to foreign trade and having a more international team. And as we can see here, between the requirements, they ask a proficient level of Mandarin Chinese And usually, based on the Mandarin Chinese exams that were before, like reach a level 6, they required an HSK level 5. Now, I think we have 11 levels now. Maybe you will correct me in the next presentations, but we have 11 levels. I remember that long ago we had a similar number, and a foreign friend of mine that reached that level, he said like, okay, this is the Confucius level. This is the top level of Mandarin Chinese, and this level is not something that an employer will request from you. They will ask you for intermediate level so you can communicate with your colleagues and your superiors, etc. I believe that I am right on time, and then I'm open to questions from the audience. And thank you so much for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias, de verdad.
Thank you very
Ha
much.
sido buenísimo, Luis Felipe.
It has been brilliant,
Muy
Luis Felipe.
interesante. Hemos
Very
podido
interesting. We have been
conocer
able
la cultura
to
de
know
trabajar en
the
China, la importancia
structure of
del
working in
idioma
China. What is the
chino para
importance
aquellas
of
personas que
Chinese
quieran ir a
language for those
estudiar
people who
a
want to
China y a
go and
trabajar.
study to
Hay
China
varias
and also
preguntas
work?
ahí. Vamos
We have a lot of
a,
questions.
después terminada
We're gonna save
las
them
presentaciones, poder
for after the presentations,
exponerlas.
so
Muchísimas
we
gracias.
can ask them to you.
Vamos ahora
Thank you very much.
a
Now we're gonna go to
a
present
nuestro siguiente panelista,
our next panel member.
el Li
Is
Kungang,
Professor Li
doctor en
Kungang,
Derecho, se
doctor in law.
dedica principalmente
He's
a la
mainly
docencia e
engaged in
investigación en derecho
teaching and
laboral y de
research
la
in
seguridad
labor and
social.
social security law.
Actualmente es director
Currently, he is
ejecutivo
an
y
executive
miembro del
director
comité
and a member
académico
of the
de la
academic
Sociedad
committee
China de
of
Estudios de
the
Derecho
Chinese
Social,
Society of Social
vicepresidente de la
Studies,
rama de
vice
investigación de
president
derecho
of the
laboral de
labor
la
law
Sociedad
research
China
branch of
de
the
Estudios
Chinese
de Derecho
Society
Social,
of Social Law
vicepresidente
Studies,
de la rama de
vice
investigación
president
de
of the
relaciones
labor
laborales de
relations
la Sociedad
research
China de
branch of
Estudios
the
de
Chinese
Recursos
Society of
Humanos,
Human Resources
director
Studies,
ejecutivo del
executive
Comité de
director of the
Supervisión de
Labor
Seguridad
Security
Laboral
Supervision Committee
de
of the
dicha
Chinese
sociedad
Society
y
of Labor
expresidente
Law,
de la
and former
Confederación
vice
General de
president of the
Sindicatos de la
General
provincia
Confederation
de
of Trade
Anhui.
Unions of
Es
Anhui
abogado
Province.
del bufete
He is a lawyer
Beijing
of the
Jingxi
Beijing
del
Jingxi
CFEI,
law firm,
árbitro de la
MFA,
Comisión de Arbitraje
arbiter
de
of the
Conflictos
Anhui
Laborales de
Labor
la
Dispute
provincia de
Arbitration
Anhui,
Commission,
asesor jurídico de la
legal
Federación de
advisor of
Sindicatos de
Anhui
Anhui
Federation of
y
Trade
asesor
Units,
jurídico de la
and a legal
Universidad de
advisor
Anhui.
of
Ha
Anhui
estudiado en
University.
la Facultad de
He studied
Derecho de
at the
la
University of
Universidad de
Baltimore Law
ha
School.
sido profesor
He has
visitante
been a visiting
investigador en la
professor and
Facultad de Derecho
researcher
de la
at the University
Universidad
of
de Melbourne,
Melbourne
en
Law School in
Australia,
Australia,
en la Universidad de
and also
California, Santa
University of
Bárbara,
California,
y
Santa
en el
Barbara,
Instituto de Estudios e
and the
Investigación
Japan
Laborales de
Institute for
Japón.
Labor Studies
Ha
and
publicado
Research.
más de 70
He has
artículos
published
en
more than
chino,
70
inglés y francés
articles in
y ha
Chinese, English, and
participado en la
French, and
redacción,
has
autoría
participated
y
in the writing,
traducción de más
authoring,
de 10
and
libros
translation of
y
more than 10
monografías
books and academic
académicas
monographs
relacionadas con el derecho.
that are all related to law.
Presentará el
He will be
desarrollo de la
presenting
economía de
the development
plataformas en
of the
China
platform
y los
economy
retos
in
para el
China
sistema laboral
and the
y la
challenges
seguridad
for the
social.
labor market and social
Bienvenido, profesor
security.
Li. Y
Welcome,
disculpe,
Professor Li.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
感谢罗伯特
Thank you so
先
much
生
for
的介绍。
Roberto Lafontan's
我今天也很高
introduction
兴
for
有
me.
机会
Today, I'm so
和大家一
glad
起
to have this
看
opportunity
中
to
国
share
平台经济的发展
the
状况 以
development of the
及劳
platform
动
economy in
和
China
保障
and
制
its
度
challenges
提出
for
的
the
挑战。
labor and the social
我
security
一
system.
生都在教劳动法，我从
For my lifetime, I
1993年开
teach
始到现在已
to
经
the labor
30
law
年的
from 1993.
另外我做
Up
劳
to
动
now,
法律仲裁员
I
也
teach
做
the
了20
labor
多年。
law.
所以说我一直是
I served for 20 years for the labor law.
我下面我讲一下
Okay, next,
next slide 下一页
okay, next page.
next show Spanish 对 yes yes 我首先讲一下中国平台
So
经济
firstly,
的发展
I will introduce the current situation of development of platform economy. I have been to so many countries for China. For the development of platform economy is one of the best development in the world. Platform economy is a new economic system based on digital technology, consisting of the data-driven, platform-supported, and network-coordinated economic activities units, and it is a general term for all kinds of economic relations based on digital platforms. In the context of the era of the Internet of Everything, platform economy has become a new economic model of fully integrate to the industrial chain and improve the efficiency and resource of allocations. Along with the development of the platform economy, platform employment have shown a clear trend growth globally, with particularly significant growth in industries such as transport, sales, express delivery, and catering. So the next page. From the statistics, for every year, China's government will publish a sharing economy market turnovers. And 2022 has published. In 2021, we can see the transaction scale of China's sharing economy market will be about more than 3,000 billion yuan. In 2022, and you can see this chart, especially in transportation, sharing accommodation, knowledge capacity, service, sharing medical, sharing office, production capacities, the different fields. And for another field, next page.
Yes, this one.
Another field have a rapid development. The first is online takeaway users and sharing accommodations, and another one is online delivery. Among the internet users will be 38.54% and 6.63% and 61.44% respectively. The fast growth in digital and sharing economics have met new consumer demands, spawned new forms of employment, and created a large number of jobs. And from the sum of the transaction, it's very high. In 2022, national online retail sales reached 13.79 trillion yuan. And for the physical goods was 11.96 trillion yuan, up to 6.9% year-on-year, presenting a new high of the 27.2% of total retail sales of consumer goods. If we buy the goods from the internet and for the it's up to the 1/4 for all the consumer goods. In 2022, the share of the online taxi passenger traffic in total taxi traffic will be about 40.5%. We don't have the statistics about 2023 and 2024, but I forecast more than 50%. For all the young teenagers, most of the young teenagers, when they call the taxi, use the online and is much cheaper than the traditional taxi. And with the development of the platform economy, and there are many platforms, it's about 300 platforms for the online taxis, and for all the takeaways, and from the mobile phone to order the delivery in China is more than 1/4. For the accommodations have a rapid development. Okay, next page. That is to say, using mobile phone to call a taxi, to book a hotel, to call a delivery, it will be a very high percentage in China. You can see the statistics. It's up to the 61.44%, and more than 2/3 users using mobile phone to order the delivery, especially for the youth generations. Okay, next page. For the platform economy development, to promote for all the platforms and for the employment, to the promotions of the employment, is more than several thousand millions. In 2022, 12.06 million new jobs were created in cities and towns across the country, exceeding the accepted target of the 11 million, which is highly related to the development of the platform economy. On the other hand, in China, there are many online websites, office like DingTalk, Facial, and Tencent Meeting has built online workspaces that support the paperless office, reducing the needs of the travel, reducing the carbon footprints and the transport trips, and reducing the use of paper and meeting supplies. According to the Tencent Meetings products, up to at the end of 2022, the carbon emission reduction is equivalent to the carbon emissions of 229 million private cars traveling for 14 days. For the platform economy, and not only to promote the environment, but also to save the energy. The second, legislation and regulation of platform economy. Over the past 5 years, China has established a top-level legal regime for data governance to protect all the employees. Over the past several years, we have built many types of the legislations, including the cybersecurity law, the data security law, and the personal information protection law. So next. According to the statistics, in the first half of 2022, the State Internet Information Office accumulated a total of 3,491 website platforms interviewed in accordance with the law. Fines and penalties, there are 238 cases, suspended functions and updates 419. That is to see, we support this development, but we also have very strict with it. Now, the platform economy faces big challenges. The challenges posed by the platform economy to labor law and the social insurance law. Because for the platform economy, compared with the traditional factory employees, is very different. Next. So firstly, from the part of the changes in employers' responsibilities, for the traditional employers, they need organize factors of productions. They need to build the factory and buy the machines and organize the productions. Now they need connect factors of production. For example, we have the taxi platform. We just create an application, and they need for the drivers you take their own cars to join this app. And for all the users, you download this application and through this app to call the taxi. They are not organize the factors, and now they connect factors and productions. The second, for the traditional employers, you need to give the labor tools. But now, the laborers provide their own tools. For example, in China, for all the deliverers, they drive their own bicycles or electric bicycles. It's not the company provide all the transportations. And next, as employers give the laborers work, now you now register in the platform. You can grab and dispatch the orders. Because, for example, there is a if no one to grab these opportunities, and as a platform where put all the packages, all the, and you have the refuser, you can refuse for all the orders. So for the traditional, they give you work, you cannot refuse, but now you have the right to refuse. And traditional says pay the laborers, but now in the platform, you don't need to give the money to the employers, for the clients to the drivers, riders in the platforms. For example, you call a delivery, you can pay to the deliveries man, and you don't need to give the pay to the employers. For the traditional part, the controllable risk of the closed workplaces now, for now, there is uncontrollable risk of the open workplaces. So now it's very strict in China, assumption of the labor and the social insurance responsibilities. But now for many platforms, they don't want to assume their responsibilities in the platform. So next. So for the employees, we can see the changes. For now, for the employees, it's very different from the traditional employees. For the traditional part is the employer will provide labor to the employee, and now you provide the labor to the customers. For the traditional part, the employees obey the employer instructions. Now you obey the customer's instructions. For the traditional part, you must accept the employer's instructions, but now you can refuse the employer's instructions. For example, if you don't want to work, you can you can turn off your applications. For traditional part, there is intangible employer regulation, but now it's intangible platform data control. So this part is very different. So next. But in practice, the platform want to escape the responsibilities. They don't want to take the responsibilities. They give many measures. For example, some platforms do not sign labor contracts with employees. but sign a cooperation agreements in an attempt to invade labor relationships. And some platforms allow employees to register as individual entrepreneurs. And for the delivers, for the express industry, they make all the expressmen to sign individual entrepreneurs and to shift this and sign a contract with the individual entrepreneurs to invade the labor relationships. And some platforms sign cooperation contracts with labor companies, allowing the labor company to manage the platform's employees, establishing a so-called firewall in an attempt to invade labor relations. In the judicial practice, and what's this like in judicial practice? In judicial practice, because this is different from the traditional labors and the employees to evade their responsibilities. So in practice, it brings many difficulties. And for some cases, recognize the labor relations, but some identify the labor relations. But there is a regulations. If the employees get a very badly injured, they need in hospital to discover, and for all the judicial part to give a very good protections for all the employees. But if you want work related, if you want claiming overtime pay, annual leave, and other rights and interest, unlikely to be supported. So in this statute of the judicial practice, of course, cause many difficulties. It brings many problems for all the employees. The first problem is the long working hours, and for the delivery men, they work over 12 hours. They work 7 days and no rest and no overtime pay, no annual leave, and no insurance. And for other employees, the lack of the organizations and difficulty in organizing trade unions, difficulty in upgrading labor treatment through the collective bargaining. So it also brings many difficulties in social insurance law. So next. The first one is the work condition is very dangerous. There are many work-related injuries, but it's difficult to include them in the social insurance system for work-related injuries. When workers give birth or become unemployed, they are unable to obtain appropriate social insurance. When workers grow old, they are unable to enjoy a pension. So this problem is very complicated. And what's the directions of us to pursue? So the direction of our give efforts is the first one is for all the workers, they have decent salaries and stable jobs. And the rise to the rest of social insurance protection for those employed on the platforms. Employees can join the trade unions, and for collective bargainings, the states can closely monitor the rules and the legality of the platform's operations.
这是我讲的这个劳动法
This
的
is
问题。下面我
for the
想
problems of the
加的内
labor's
容，这就是我
law.
们会议的
The
内容。
next, I will talk about
我
the
很
Chinese
高兴地
Plus.
看到我们在
I'm so happy
这
to see
个这个国外有很多很多
in
的
foreign
人在
countries
学
there are
中
many
文。你们学了中
learners
文
to learn
也
Chinese.
就
When they
会
learn
知道
Chinese,
中国中
you can
中国的中
know
文哈是
the
很有
Chinese
魅力的一种语
is a
言，
very
它
charming
有很丰富
language
的丰富的
and
内
with
容。因为第一
with
个
the
中国历
tremendous
史很长，
knowledge.
你可
Because
以
China has a
在
long
初中的时
history,
候
you
了解
can
中国的历
learn the
史，
Chinese
还
language
有
and
丰
you
富
can learn
的
the
文
Chinese
化。另外一个我
culture.
们有古代的文学作品，
We
很
have
多
the
诗歌也是很有意思的，
ancient
对吧？你可
poems
能很学到很多东西。
and literatures. You can know
另外一
many
个呢，中
things.
国人
The
还
next,
对
the
各地
Chinese
友人是
people
比较友好。还有一个
is
呢，
so
我们很
welcoming
喜
for
安
all the
全国家。
foreigners,
就是
and
实
China
际
is a
上你
very
你
safe
在
country.
我走过很多国家，
In
我
fact,
觉
I
得
have been
中
to many
国
countries.
给你的安全感
China
是
it
好
will
好的
give
国家，
you
你
much
可以
better
在
sense
琳
of
琅
the
的城市，我们
securities.
这城市里边
At
看不出
midnight,
没
if
有
you
什么
walk
安
in
全隐患。
the
这
cities,
是中国的。
there is no
但是呢，
danger
从
in
经
China.
从我们这个学习的来讲，这个仅
For all the
学语言
learners,
呢，还是
only
有一
to
点儿
learn
限制。
language
因为什么呢？
is very
仅
limited.
学语言只会
If
说
you
一些话，
only
对吧？你还
learn
没有
the
专业
language,
加
you
以辅
just
助。
can speak
因
some
此，在语言
Chinese.
学好的基础上呢，我建议
Based
大
on
家
the
建
language
议大家
learning,
呢
I
是向
recommend
专业方向发展，这一点儿是
for
非常好的。
the
其实
learners
我
to
本人也
learn
是转业
the
的，你知道。我
professional
以前是在一个中学里边当
factors.
英语老师的，我18岁开始在中学里边去当英
When
语
I
老
was
师。后来
18,
我
I
改
was
自学
an
法，
English
后
teacher
来去读了
in a
硕
middle
士，
school,
然后再
and
读了
I
研究生。
learned
对，
the
总之
law by
学
myself,
这个
and
语
I
言
will
成
be
熟
a
是要
law
向
teacher in the
专业方向
universities.
转化了。
When you
我在
learn the language for a long
第
time,
三
you must shift
第三
it
个
to
下
the
一个
professional parts.
next， 就是
And for the
如果你到中国学
specializations,
习的话说呢，
if you come to
学
China
习法律，
to
我觉得
learn
也是一个很
law,
好的选择。
is-
法律经过我们这
in
几十
Chinese
年的
law
发展，
over the
我觉
past
得我们已经建立了一个很好的
decades,
法
we
律体
built
系。另外一
a
个呢，
very
我们
good
也有很
the
多
system of the
有
law.
生动
We
的
have
案例。我们通过
more
这个学
vivid
习西方
cases
的法律，融合
through
中国
learning
的
the
这传
Western
统的历
laws
史
to
社会，
mixed
有
with
我
the
们
China's
形成我们
history
自己特点的这
to
个法律。
build our
就是
very
说，你在中国学法律的时候呢，
specific
你加上你原有的语言基础，
law
加上有中文的基础，再学中国的法律呢，
based
我觉
on
得
the
的
knowledge
确
of
是
Chinese
很
to
好
learn
的一个
Chinese
方向。
law.
就我
It's
本
a
人来讲
very
呢，
good
我
directions
原
for
来
all of
从一
us.
个英语老师天天教英
For
语，
me,
到了
from an
教
English
法律，
teacher
然后又做
to
这个
teach
案子，处理
law
案子，
and
我觉
to
得我
deal
人
with
生
all the
阅历
cases
丰富了很多。另外一个思维的能力
and
思
enrich
考问题、
my
处理问题的能力
life
也得到极
and
大的这
to
个增
better
长。
my
再一个呢，就是
thinkings
我们学校的学生，我
and
以前啊，就我
for
们法
our
院我们
university
也有
in
我
law
们国际
school
学生，我
we have
以前
many
是教过我
international
们来自于
students
日本的学生，
I taught
来自于
the
韩国
international
的学生，
students from
还有来自
Japan
于东南亚的
Korea
学生。我
and
们以前
South
还有
Asia
这个东南亚的学生在我们这个在
Well,
我们这
for the
获得
South
过博士。
Asia
据说有的学生已
students
经当到
got
最
the
高法院的法
PhD
官了，在国
and
外
they
已经非常成
can
功。
be
所
the
以说，最后希望
judicial
大家呢，
in their countries.
在
So
学
lastly,
中文的基础
at
上，
last,
欢迎大
based on
大
the
家到
learning
中国
Chinese,
留学
I
中国留
welcome
学
to
呢，
all
在
the
学其他
students
的专业，
can study in China,
社
choose
会上有
other
很
major.
好的
In the
发展。
future, you
好，谢
have
谢大家，
a
我今天就讲这么多。
bright development. Thank you
谢
so
谢。
much. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, profesor Lee. Muy interesante. Ha sido una
Thank you very
visión
much, Professor Lee.
genial
Most
de las
interesting. This has been a
plataformas y
brilliant
todo lo
vision
que
of the
esto
platforms and
conlleva, las
everything
plataformas
that this
digitales, y
brings,
lo que eso
all
conlleva en el
digital
mercado
platforms, and what
laboral, en las
these
leyes laborales.
means for
Muchas
the
gracias,
work
profesor Lee. Muy
market and also for
interesante.
the
Y
legal
ahora
part of
queremos dejar con
the markets as
ustedes
well. So
al
now we would like to
panelista
leave you with
chileno, el doctor
the
Aníbal
Chilean
Rodríguez
panel
Letelier,
member Aníbal
abogado,
Rodríguez Letelier,
licenciado en
a lawyer, bachelor in law and social sciences from University Gabriela Mistral, master's in economics and business management of the same university. Currently, PhD student in public law of Castilla-La Mancha, Spain University, partner of Estudio Jurídico Maquena Cruzat, dean and professor of the Faculty of Law of Universidad Santo Tomás, advisor to international companies in public bidding processes such as the Chilean Rail Company and also Chilean Metro Company. Is also an advisor to organizations and for non-profit organizations in the processes of compliance, data protection, and prevention of economic crimes. In the academic field, he has been a guest professor at the Universidad Austral Argentina, Castilla-La Mancha University in Spain. He has also co-edited books on administrative contracting and criminal law. In addition, he is a peer reviewer for the Chilean National Accreditation Commission for the law degree, and his experience extends to public management, having held positions in the municipality of Lo Barnechea in Santiago, Chile. The professor will be presenting, the dean will be presenting legal systems for hiring through the Chilean state. Welcome. Thank you very much, Roberto. Let me see if I can share my presentation. First, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank Andrea, Roberto, and the CLEC Foundation for inviting me to be part of this panel, which has been most interesting. The contribution of Luis Felipe gives light on a number of things and motivates us as well, and also makes us understand the importance that this has, how important China is nowadays as a country, as a world power, which in a way calls us to know more. So Felipe was also adding this whole idea of moving to China or working in China. He was telling him from experience. So, and I believe that shows how important these webinars are, because here we can understand each other and we get to know each other better. And there, Professor Lee gives a brilliant presentation explaining us and also making us reflect that for me, this is very important. What is the importance of knowing the Chinese culture, this wonderful culture, this experience that gives us often so much knowledge, and that also allows us to access different markets and know the culture. In order to know the Chinese culture, the language is very important. It will be so interesting to keep on learning Chinese, and then I join this brilliant invitation by Professor Lee. But that same invitation, I would also like to extend to you regarding looking in which way can we know culture better, the Latin American culture and the Chinese culture. Oftentimes, in my own experience, I've had to be in different countries of the world. I was blessed to be in Beijing in year 2019, prior to the pandemic. I had an invitation extended to me by the back then ambassador of China in Chile for the Asian market. And President Eduardo Frei personally invited me to attend this Chile week, and I had to be in Beijing for a couple of days. Sadly, it was not long enough. But then I could see the importance for the Chilean market, which is such a small market where just few inhabitants. It's a long, narrow country that has a lot of wealth from the sea, from the mountains, from the south, north. We have a lot of wealth as a country, but we're a small country nonetheless. And we're a country of 18 million inhabitants, 20 million inhabitants, not more. And that, of course, opens for us the need as a country to open up to foreign investment and open up to invite to those foreign investors so they can see an opportunity in Chile. And for me, I had to participate in the Chile week, and I was spending time with a lot of Chinese companies. I had to be with very important Chinese companies linked to investments. I had a meeting with several of them. And what caught my attention the most here was the difficulties that people have regarding the knowledge of the different cultures. And without a doubt, law, as Professor Lee was saying, as Felipe was saying as well, they help us understand better the way of relating ourselves. Law, not only from the point of view of the beginning of a business or the installation of a business or setting up a business, but also how do we address the eventual conflict that will arise? In Chile, we do have conflict. We are not free of conflict with investors. That is a natural process of human beings and businesses. You will always encounter conflict. But the good thing is, how do you address it? The resolution of conflict. So these conflicts are addressed organically with good legislation, with good structure. So for many years, I've been dedicating myself to this. And as I was telling Roberto, I'm doing my PhD now. And this has to do a lot with the public contracts. What does this have to do with free competence? This is what I am doing now in the research process. So this will allow me to incorporate and make publications of in which way in the Chilean and European legislation can we add free of competition in the contract process. So without a doubt, one of the topics that has the greatest importance nowadays is how do foreign investors have opportunities in the Chile market. And therefore, I really thank the invitation by Roberto, because this allows me to show you. I'm not going to be working about work contract because I saw very interesting questions already arriving that help us understand this. But I'm going to go now into how foreign investors from China or anywhere else in the world can invest in our country. And what are the systems that link them to the States? What are the opportunities and the challenges that they have for foreign investors? And one of the elements that is key here is to know and understand the different cultures. We are different. Latin Americans are different. They often say we are a bit more scattered, we're joyful, or we like dancing. It's true. Many countries are better than Chile when it comes to dancing, at least. But we're very regulated. We're heavily regulated. And therefore, we have a lot of standards that are very specific. The law, in our case, is extremely strict. And many times this was happening in Chinese conversations. The difficulty we have of understanding that the processes that we have are rigorous processes. And I set an example here. To invest in Chile, some Chinese business people were saying that it was enough to come here, have good relations, as I could tell you, with the authorities of the current government. And with that, you would just close the business. That is not enough in a system as our own. It is not enough with having a good relation. That is, of course, important. That is a first step to generate human relations or get to know each other's culture, as Professor Lee was saying. Getting to know the culture helps, without a doubt, to installing ourselves better. But we also need to know the standards way more. And as I was saying now, we are a very structured country. And what are the options that investors have? Maybe here, I'm not going to go on the slides. I'm a very generic speaker. You have the numbers there. You can read them later if you want. But the importance that this has for Chile, all of the investments that can be done in infrastructure now is more important than ever. Chile, being a small country that has a strong foreign investment and has had a lot of foreign investors, well, next to the Chinese numbers, we're tiny, but anyways, Chile has had until 2019 a very strong foreign investments. All of the hospitals, all of the roads, all of the railways, all of the public systems, airports even, have many of them been developed by Chinese companies. And this has been very important. But it has been at the expense of a lot of knowledge of the standard as well. And when we have new Chinese companies with an interest in developing, we need to get that standard out but also the cultural difference that I believe oftentimes can be an important entry barrier, or it can be even a very it can scare investors away. I refer to the big companies that they invest a lot anyways, but they could do it more even, or maybe even SMEs could also invest. So in the visit that we have in the Chile Week, the number of medium-sized companies that wanted to invest and do commercial relations with China and Chile was huge. We were about 300 guests back at the time with huge work behind us, and I believe that really is causing better relations, but we need to know the legal development and the standards as well. And without a doubt, the infrastructure plan that I refer here as well causes and validates what I'm saying. Chile requires now a process of investment, even more coming from a period of a crisis that we had here in Chile. In 2019, like the political and social crisis we had, and then which was further aggravated with the pandemic that lasted longer than we expected. And this has been very difficult because it has been very hard to reinforce the investment in our country. And it has been declining, and we hope it will come back. And we hope the numbers this year and the next will go higher and hopefully better. One of the ways that have been most developed here in Chile, and that is a good example in Latin America, is in which way do we attract these investors, these foreign investors? And these foreign investors could come through different systems because the state yearly sets through their yearly budget law for the public sector, they set a system of funding or what is the incomes or expenses or the investment that will be determined for that. And all of this pass based on this budget law from the public law. This establishes all of the procedures based on the way in which these foreign investors, and I don't mean only the Chinese, but I put my impetus here because of the quality and the amount of investment they have, which is very important because the Santiago Metro has been built by a lot of Chinese investment, so that's why it's so important for us, but also for other countries where we reinforce the participation here. But here, in this Chilean interest manifested through the budget law, through the yearly plan of investments, and other instruments that we have available, these all causes a way of promoting and encouraging investors. So how do they come here? So we have a law 20,848 for the framework for foreign investment in Chile. This establishes and regulates the way in which foreign investors can expand their representation in Chile. And there's a number of figures that I'm not going to dwell on, but we do have a whole system that is protective. And how can we get foreign investors? From a tax perspective and also from a participation point of view, or how they can find local partners or other company partners. So we have a number of figures that we as Chileans have been copying from the Spanish legislation, such as the public-private partnerships that in a way we have developed. And this I'm going to be referring later as well, but also contract systems where we can associate temporarily from between companies, so we can thus find how do we generate better networks and how do we improve all of the process of the investment cost. And for that, we have a whole agency of the promotion of the foreign investment that without a doubt collaborates for these foreign investors, as I was saying, feel safe to invest in Chile, but not only in terms of safety, but they also feel confident that any conflict they will encounter can be addressed within the legal framework that are previously established based on this framework that subscribes to this law. So one of the most salient characteristics I wanted to refer to here is that Chile, and I warned you before, In 93, under the government of President Ricardo Lagos government, we create a system of concessions. What is this? We start analyzing the way of seeking public-private partnerships. In some legislations, let's say Argentina, Ecuador, and other countries, they talk about the APPs, which is the Spanish acronyms for the public-private partnerships that, in a way, allow a way of attracting foreign investment in order to develop this jointly between the investors and the local governments. So there has been a strong importance here as well, and this means that the concession system generates 0.3% of the GDP. And you can see the numbers in my presentation. So this is all done through a very centralized system. Our country, Chile, is a centralized system with a central government, with ministers that define the public policies, and these public policies are, in a way, also respected and supported by the different national bodies. So now, this concession system, you don't need to read this, but this concession system is regulated through a concession law for public works. And this law, as I mentioned, since 1993, has been mutating and improving the legislation in several standards. This has allowed foreign investors to be able to generate construction, as I would say, of infrastructure. All of our roads in Chile. Chile has an important number of urban roads and non-urban roads. Santiago has a number of concession roads that are most relevant that are paid automatically through a system called TAG, which allows us to address this, and this has allowed that these investors will have their suitable revenues. This has in the public-private partnerships and the concession law has improved the infrastructure, has reduced risk, has improved the benefits for the end consumer. And in this topic as well, we need to mix the system of the interest of the state for granting concessions with the standards of free competition, because we have a very modern legislation that helps us to prevent these systems of having just one single provider. So the idea that the Chile market is seeking through this invitation that is extended for the concessions to third parties, this is an invitation to compete as well. And this is an invitation to compete how? They're invited to compete in the participation of tender processes. Our legal system forces the general standard of participation with the state is done through the concept of public tenders or public proposals or bids that is done through a list of bases that is known by all parties. They're all published, they're public, and that is the general standard. Exceptionally, we have the direct contracting. And the direct contracting needs to be established under very specific criteria that will not go to detail now, but we have specific criteria such as the public tender, we have the private tenders as well, and we have direct contracts. And then we have agile purchases and other operations that exist in Chile Compra, which is the way in which private people operate through the state day-to-day in a country. But for foreign investors, we have this law of concessions, as I was mentioning, that tends to improve and, of course, is granted for certain projects of a greater tonnage or bigger projects, such as, for instance, the concessions. We have concessions at international and nationals that can be done as well. We have done the border controls here. The hospitals have been done through tenders that have done internationally, and this allows for the participation of foreign companies through themselves or through a consortium. So here in our legislation, we are very open to the invitation of everything that has to do with foreign investors. And this helps us a lot to improve the benefits that this will be granted. The contracting is a way, and the administrative procedures is a way of contracting the state. But the concession law with the state as well, as I was saying, this has very relevant projects that generate greater investment. This procedure of concessions, which is what I was saying, the public-private partnerships or participations or the different forms it has, is how the private companies with the public entity coordinating themselves, participate and support each other to do investment. And this has different stages. And they have a first stage of declaration of existence of the project. And to summarize, this declaration of existence of the project can be done also from the foreign investor. That foreign investor can also think that there is a project or an initiative, and here, for instance, we have a stage of assessment. We have everything that has to do with the concession of a Santiago Valparaíso train that the government of President Boric recently called for tender and opened the tender process. And this is coming from a company that proposes a project. They invite a project, and it does not mean that this project is going to be executed by the company, but it's a tender process. So they propose the project, but of course, anyone else can win a tender. So in that first stage, we declare the existence of the project. We have two forms, or from the private party that generates an idea of introducing this. And I also had to work in a project with the Inter-American Bank of Development. And in that project, we were seeing the analysis of how to present the whole a border control with Argentina that would generate a lot more communication from Argentina to Chile for effects of being able to send products by ship through different parts of the world, and including China. But that is still being analyzed. But this is where the projects are coming from the private sector. Or also, sometimes they are born from the state. The state determines that they need to develop a concrete activity, such as, for instance, the roadmaps, the interurban roads, or the big roads that we have, the 5 North road, that are also developed by concessions. All of the roads that brings together Chile from Arica to Punta Arenas, to the length of Chile, all of that has been done through concessions now, and also with returns through a tariff that we users pay when we use the service. It is not that the state is paying for this. The state ensures a return on investment, but that return on investment is coming through the users and how they monthly pay for the use of that. Second stage is the tender process and the awarding of the public work concession. And this is a long, tedious process and a very complex process of that, because this requires all the technical capacity. And then I go back to Professor Lee and Luis Felipe. And that is why it's so important to have the law schools, because here we require, without a doubt, expert lawyers to analyze the tender basis and and they can advise the state and the companies as well. This is why this is such a wonderful career and allows us to work in so many areas of law, and such as social areas, etc. And finally, we have the third stage, which is the construction or exploitation. Without a doubt, is also very important, because this is the one that will allow the company to obtain a certain return on the investment. Other systems for contracting, we have direct contracting, private tender, and framework agreements that are not on the focus of great investment, but these are the ones that we small companies or even private people develop in our direct relationship with the state. As I was saying, the basic standard or the general standard is the public tender, but we also have the private tenders, framework agreement, direct contracting, and agile purchase. And all of these, you can find them in Chile Compra platform. And this is a very modern platform. Some years ago, I was blessed to be in a seminar in Spain And then Chile Compra director went there to expose this, and they were very surprised from what Professor Lee was saying regarding the use of these digital platforms today, that without a doubt are being ever more important. And this importance is seen in the use of these platforms that exceed our own borders. They exceed the borders of Chile in the terms of the participation. So, and this is what helps us to develop further. And finally, the last thing I would like to say is that our organic structure is very solid. And why do I say this? Because it is important for the conflict resolution as well. And I started saying that many times in these processes of tenders, we have processes for discussion, but they are addressed. And how are they addressed? We have a government chancellery that checks all of the administrative acts celebrated by the state that needs to be validated. And this is a powerful chancellery and very decisive. We have a public contracts court that is also a special body that addresses the standards for the public contracting, even when I do have observations on that, but I will leave that for another analysis regarding the capacity for resolution. We have the common courts that are absolutely independent from the government, and that is also a key issue. The arbitration courts, concession panel, and the court for the defense of free competition. Andrea's giving me a look. I'm so sorry. The concession panels is something I wanted to mention. The concession panels are a way of addressing the big conflicts that may arise by the concession law. And this concession panel has the brilliance that they address this from the technical and legal point of view. And that is what's important in a development as what we have here. In Chile, things are addressed from the legal point of view and not from the political point of view. And that is the brilliance of this. And that is what I wanted to finish with, because this is key for the Chinese or foreign culture. It's key to understand that today we are very regulated, we're heavily regulated, we have a lot of standards, but everything is addressed legally. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Aníbal.
Thank you very much, Aníbal. We have seen three very interesting visions of law and Chinese. Why in this area of law Chinese is so important? Luis Felipe mentioned what's so important to be hired in China regarding the levels that we have. And Luis Felipe, I was saying that you answered some of the questions by the people. We had a lot of questions. And Professor Lee gave a very good vision of what was the platforms and the importance of law and the language in these commercial platforms. And Dean Aníbal Rodríguez has done a brilliant description of the law of contracting in Chile, and also something that is used widely in Latin America as well. So we have compared visions, bringing Latin America closer to China. So I would like to thank you all for having been here today. The questions were already answered in written. This has been one of the seminars that is the most interesting one that we've had, I would say. I would like to invite you to register on the chat for those who are not registered, so we can send you the information. And I would like to invite you for the 5th and 6th of September. We are going to have an international congress of the teaching of Mandarin Chinese in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is going to be in person and online. In person is going to be in Santiago, Chile. We're going to have speakers from all of Latin America and China. We will have also online presenters speaking of the new ways of teaching Mandarin Chinese in our region. This is going to be a very important congress. The opening ceremony is going to be at 9 a.m. Chile time on the 5th of September. And we were going to have the participation of the former President Eduardo Frei of Chile, the ruler of the Dean of Santo Tomas University. It's going to be present. We're going to have representatives of the Ministry of Education and also somebody from CLEC Beijing. And of course, I will be doing the opening remarks as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Luis Felipe. Thank you, Professor Lee. Thank you very much, Aníbal. Thanks to all of the interpreters, Shashi, that is in Spain. Jasmine, who is
a
here in
Ramiro,
Chile,
que está en Londres.
Ramiro, who is in London.
Hemos hecho un seminario
We have done a
internacional
very
en
international
distintas partes
seminar
del mundo.
from all over the
Gracias a
world.
todos por su
So thanks everyone
participación y esperamos que
for your
sigan
participation,
estando
and
con
we hope
nosotros
that
en
you
los
continue being
próximos
with us
seminarios y
in the
actividades de la
upcoming
Fundación
seminars
Keck.
and activities of the Keck
Adiós, buenas
Foundation.
noches en China,
Bye. Good
buenas
evening for
tardes
China.
en América
Good
Latina y el Caribe.
afternoon in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Buenas noches.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias a todos.
Sí.